What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and this time it's for Hand Trap Dragonmaid. So we've been messing around with this over the trap variant for the past probably a few weeks to about a month or so now, and I'm finally kind of happy enough to bring the profile forward. It still, I believe, has some minor tinkering to it. I'm only just kind of fully grasping the way I want to be playing the deck, but overall, I'm really enjoying it. I've had no issues majorly at all. Playing against the meta, it's a little bit weaker than the trap variant. However, you don't lose to all of those cards that the trap variant obviously loses to. But before we get started, as always, please remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people to the channel. And let's get on into this deck profile.
Before we do get started on this one, though, it is brought to you, of course, by yourplaymat.com, who got us our beautiful NolanTCG extra deck sleeves. These are available on yourplaymat.com, as well as you can get custom sleeves and custom playmats, so whatever you need for the current format. There is an affiliate link in the description down below that does get you a little bit of a discount on your order. Also, enter the code NOLAN10YP for 10% off your order. Also kicks back a little bit to the channel, so everything will be very much appreciated. If you're shopping there, you're getting custom sleeves, custom playmats done, make sure to enter our code at checkout. But let's get on into this deck profile.
Okay, so starting us off, of course, we have the starter, the primary card we want to draw. That is 3 copies of Chamber Dragonmaid. Do remember that this card can summon your Shiu back from the graveyard. Also make sure that it's in the sleeves properly, especially when they're these glorious, shiny, I want to say prismatics. Oh my god, no, let's just keep moving. Yeah, so this is your standard summon search. You want to be resolving this every one of your turns and pretty much as many of your opponent's turns as possible. Of course, yeah, summons back Shiu, summons back any of the big Dragonmaids from hand. Just remember that they can't then go back in a chamber. Doesn't really matter, but hey, that's something you got to keep in mind. After that, we have the second best normal summon of the deck. That is 3 copies of Parlor Dragonmaid. Lets you dump and kind of set up for future plays. Say if you're in a bit of trouble, you can send a Tidying, get you that bit of extension through on your board. If you want to get Nil Fusion place, send the Fusion spell, bounce it back. Good times, good times. Or you can just send big dragons if you want to start tagging in and out and making your opponent's day pretty rough. Then for our other normal summons, we are still just on the 1-1 ratio for these two, so we're playing 1 Kitchen, 1 Nurse. I would say if you want to boost the consistency for this deck, you would just play more Kitchens. However, it doesn't work like that. Kitchen's not a 1-card combo by itself. It does require you to play a lot of bad cards, or Kitchen by itself can play if you have already opened another Dragonmaid normal summon. However, you'd much rather just use that normal summon, unless it's Nurse. That's the only time that's kind of bad. Then after that, we go into our big dragon. So it's still on a 1-1 of each ratio. So 1 Urns, 1 Lorpa, 1 Tinnick. If this was a quick effect, this deck would be meta. I say that every time. That burns me up. If all the Dragonmaids just said quick effect, this deck would be so much better. So good. Then we get into our hand trap lines. So you do have effectively 15 cards of space in this deck. You can make other changes and kind of fit, I'd probably say, up to 17 cards of space in this list, which means you have a lot of room for hand traps, and decks that can fit a lot of hand traps tend to be kind of good. For this, though, we are playing 3 copies of Phantasme. Of course, it's a dragon. It gets you into your fusions, gets you that kind of synergy with stuff like Salamangreat Great and more prevalent in the meta. You're always really going to be resolving this. There's not really a massive deck, unless I'm completely not thinking about it right now, that does not link summon, which means you're always going to have this live. Then we get into the rest of our hand traps. We've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom, just generic, just kind of hits everything. You want to make sure that when your opponent hard activates a Red Eyes Fusion, that's a big no-no. Then we've got 3 copies of Ghost Spell, again, just kind of generically good against everything without being hilariously broken. And then we have Droll and Lockbird. The card isn't generically good against everything, but it is hilariously broken in some situations, which is the reason why we've decided to play that. That is it for our monster lineup. The other thing that we're playing is spell related, so we'll get into that as we get into that. So next off, starting with our spells, we've got 3 copies of Dragonmaid Hospitality. Of course, it is your summon back from the deck. It does also get you that Foolish. Just keep in mind that it doesn't Foolish something from Chamber. It's a bit bad. If only Chamber had a Dragon form, that card will be broken. It's going to be like quick effect, discard from hand, Rota. It's going to be fantastic. You wait, guys, you wait. And then after that, we do have our other Dragonmaid card. It is 1 copy of Changeover. This does flux from 1 to 2 in my lists, given that the opponents I'm playing against, basically. If I'm playing online, I will typically just play 1 Changeover. Given that I'm in lockdown at the moment, I don't have access to locals, which means I don't have to play against a lot of my locals people with this deck, meaning I'm just down to 1 Changeover. If I would be up at 2, that would mean I'm playing against those guys that really know what they're doing against the deck, and stuff like DD Crow hurts a lot harder if you get hit on the Changeover. It's not the end of the world. You can just play big monster beatdown and like links and stuff, but hey, it's something that you want to be doing. Then we get into our draw spells. In an attempt to make this deck as consistent as possible, I have increased the draw spell count. So we are at 3 copies of Plot of Extravagance in here, and then the 2 copies of Prosperity. I've been considering switching back to 3 Prosperity, 2 Extrav, because the Extrav randomness can bite me quite a lot sometimes. It's a bit harsh. The first time I was testing this list, I hit 3 of Dragonmaid House, or House Dragonmaid. That was pretty rough. That was a pretty bad opening experience to be playing with the Extravagance build. However, I found that the stuff you draw from Extravagance is a lot better than the Prosperities from time to time, given that you typically just need the 1 starter, and then you want to have as much stopping power to your opponent as possible, and the Extravagance tends to get you to that. Then we get into the rest of our stuff. So then we've got 3 copies of Droplets. Again, this is one of those 15 cards of variants. If you don't have Droplets, feel free to switch them out. There's no issue at all. Like, it's not super relevant. It's just a card that I'm currently playing for a bit of extra disruption. Then we get into some power 1-ofs. We've got 1 copy of Called by the Grave to get rid of those pesky hand traps and any staples our opponent might need. And then 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster after that. Then we get into our traps, which is, of course, it's always going to be the same thing. It is 3 copies of Tidying. It is your bounce. It is your summon. It does help this whole deck go round. Okay, next off we get into our extra deck, and of course we are starting off with 3 copies of Dragonmaid Shiu. Pretty standard. It is your negation, does tag into your House Dragonmaid, also does summon from the hand or grave, non-targeting for level 9 or lower. During the standby phase, gets you some quality extension. Dear God, do not forget to do that when you're playing remote duels, because your opponent will just go straight on past the standby phase. Then after that, we've got 3 copies of House Dragonmaid. Essentially, this is what you're going to be tagging into from your Shiu. It's effectively a pop. It's a Titan, essentially. You really do want to be not resolving, like, you want to have Shiu on board, essentially. You don't want to hard go into a house. There have been situations, though, where I've chosen to go hard into a house because I'm going to be bouncing a lot at the start of battle phase, and I want to be popping my opponent's entire board to push for game. That's really the one situation which I'd hard summon a house. Just remember as well, Chamber cannot summon this card out once it's been summoned with Shiu because it's not technically fusion summoned. Then we get into our link lines after that. We've got 3 copies of Heretic Seal, obviously, starting us off. It is the best link monster you play. It does toolbox out your entire deck, and it does make a lot of decks struggle, given that their normal summon needs to resolve for them to have fun times. Then we get into the rest of our links. So we've got 1 copy of Striker Dragon and 1 Pisty. I would say these are also essential for your extra deck. The other 4 cards that float around in here are completely cuttable. If you did want to play a Super Poly variant, you can cut the next 4 cards and play Super Poly targets instead. I'd honestly recommend that if your locals is dominated by stuff like Dragon Link, at which point this deck can, of course, Super Poly that stuff up. So going into Dragon Link stuff with the Super Poly, good times for you. Which means I would probably recommend cutting these next 4 cards, of course. We've already touched base on that. But the Striker and the Pisty, the reason they're important is because if you only open 1 Dragonmaid and a way to get that Dragonmaid card back, say you open just the Chamber and a bunch of hand traps, you would typically summon the Chamber, add Hosp, link it off for one of these 2, and then summon back the Chamber with the Hospitality. That would then get you a new Heretic Seal, of course. So you do want to always have 1 link, 1 target, and given Striker Dragons at 1, you just play 1 Pisty as well. That's essentially my thought patterns to that. Then we get into the rest of our cards. So these are like more generic links that get you through to, of course, your end game. This is 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix. Of course, Nightmare Phoenix just here to pop some back row. It's transition piece, really. Then we have 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn. Again, can transition through to your access code, which we're going to get to in time. However, this can also spin a card. In the situation where you've gone for a Heretic Seal of Heavenly Spheres, Pisty, Striker Dragon, and then you've used the Pisty to summon back, but you still want to go in your access code, traditionally you would go into a Boral Sword Dragon from that point, and that would be how you push for game. Given that I'm playing access code, we do now have the 1 copy of Triple Burst Dragon floating around in here, simply because you want to be using it to transition through to your access code. You do need to clear the dragon, the Pisty off board because it locks you to dragons, so Triple Burst is how you're going to be getting around that. Do keep in mind it does have that added effect to do the summon back of the Link 2 and the monster. However, that's not the turn it's summoned, and it is very rare that this card's going to be sitting on your board until the next turn. But that wraps up here for the deck profile. Do, as always, make sure to comment down below any recommendations or things you would change. The next time we're probably going to be looking at a Dragonmaid list will probably be when I start messing around with combo Dragonmaid and starting to mix it with stuff like Dragon Link. Reason why I haven't done that already is because I'm not a super massive fan of the Dragoonity engine in the deck. Like, it's logical and it makes sense, but it does commit essentially your entire hand to the board, which is why I'm not a massive fan of it. So if you're here for Dragonmaid content, you're always going to see Dragonmaid lists on the channel. Of course, I really enjoy the deck, given you can see I clearly have invested into it, so you're always going to be seeing content related to that. So hit that subscribe button if you are keen for that. And as always, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.